What if the person who lived in your apartment before you never actually left? That's the question Daniel and Marissa Carter still can't answer. In the fall of 2019, the Carters signed a 1-year lease for apartment 4B in a pre-war building in Brooklyn, New York. The rent was surprisingly affordable for the area. Exposed brick, hardwood floors, big windows overlooking the street. It felt like they'd finally caught a break. The landlord, Mr. Levin, was in his late 60s, quiet, polite, slightly nervous. When Daniel asked why the unit had been vacant for 2 months in such a competitive neighborhood, Levin hesitated. Previous tenant left unexpectedly, he said. Personal reasons. That was it. The first week passed without incident. Tay unpacked, hosted a small housewarming, met a few neighbors. The woman downstairs mentioned something strange as she handed Marissa a misdelivered package. 4B? Huh? She said slowly. Thought that place was still occupied. Marissa laughed it off. We just moved in. The woman blinked. Oh, must have been mistaken. But 3 nights later, Daniel woke up at exactly 2:30 a.m. He didn't know what had stirred him at first. The room was dark, quiet except for something subtle. A faint shuffle, like fabric, brushing against a wall. He held his breath. There it was again. Soft footsteps, coming from the hallway. He nudged Marissa. Did you hear that? She groaned. Probably the upstairs neighbors. But the sound wasn't above them. It was inside the apartment. Daniel got out of bed and stepped into the hallway. The kitchen light was off. The living room was empty. The bathroom door stood slightly open. Everything looked normal. Until he noticed the closet door at the end of the hall. It was wide open. They never left it open. Inside, their coats swayed slightly as if someone had brushed past them. Daniel checked every room. Nothing. The front door was still dead-bolted from the inside. The next morning, Marissa blamed it on stress. Moving into a new place always felt unfamiliar. Every creak seemed amplified. But that same night, it happened again. Las 2:13, Alto M. Footsteps. This time, clearer. Deliberate. Walking from the living room toward their bedroom, Daniel grabbed his phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut across the dark hallway. Empty, except the bathroom sink was running, a steady stream of water hitting porcelain. He froze. They always turned the faucet off tightly. Marissa stood behind him, pale. Did you turn that on? No. He stepped forward and shut it off. The air in the apartment felt heavier than before. The following day, Daniel checked the lease documents more carefully. Something caught his attention. The previous tenant's name was listed as Evan R. Holloway. Move-out date, August 3rd. But there was no forwarding address, no contact number, just a signature that looked rushed. Almosk said, curious. Daniel asked Mr. Levin about Holloway. The landlord's smile faltered. He left suddenly. Didn't say much, just handed me the keys. Did he break the lease? No. Paid in full. Why would someone pay rent and disappear? Levin avoided eye contact. Some people don't like explaining themselves. That night, Marissa couldn't sleep. At 2:13 a.m., before the footsteps even started, she was already awake, waiting. And then a whisper. Faint. Faint. Close to her ear. I'm still here. She bolted upright, heart racing. Daniel was asleep beside her. The whisper had been male. Low. Come. Certain. The next morning, they searched the apartment thoroughly, behind the kitchen cabinets, under the sink, inside vents. Nothing. Until Daniel tapped the bedroom wall near the closet. It sounded hollow. Different from the rest. He pressed harder and felt a slight give. There was a panel, barely visible beneath layers of paint. They used a screwdriver to pry it loose. Behind it was a narrow crawl space just wide enough for a person to squeeze through. The air that rushed out was stale and warm. Daniel shone his flashlight inside. There were blankets, empty water bottles, food to wrap peppers, and scratched into the drywall quattrobites. Ismin and Marisa felt her knees buckle. Someone had been living inside their walls. Recently, they called the police. Officers searched the crawl space but found no one. No fresh footprints. No fingerprints that matched any records. But one officer asked a question that chilled them both. "You said the noises happen at 2:13 a.m. every night." Daniel nodded. The officer exchanged a look with his partner. That's the time Holloway was reported missing. Missing, not moved out. Missing. Daniel confronted Mr. Levin one last time. "You told us he left." The landlord's hands trembled. "He gave me the keys. What was I supposed to think?" "Did you report him missing?" Levin hesitated too long. 2 days later, the Carters broke their lease. They left most of their furniture behind. The night before moving out, Daniel set up his phone to record the hallway from midnight onward. At 2:13 a.m., the footage shows something that still circulates quietly online among urban horror forums. The bedroom door slowly creaks open. The hallway is empty, but the closet door at the end of the hall swings wide, and from inside the darkness, a shadow shifts, as if someone is stepping forward. The video ends abruptly at 2:14 a.m. The file corrupted itself seconds later. Apartment 4B is currently occupied. The rent is still surprisingly low for Brooklyn, and according to public records, the previous tenant, Eban Irahole, was never found. So if you ever wake up in the middle of the night and hear footsteps in your hallway, ask yourself one question. Are you alone? Or did the last tenant never move out? Have you ever heard a sound inside your wall and told yourself it was just the pipes? That's what Alyssa Moreno told herself. In the summer of 2021, Alyssa moved into a rent-controlled apartment in Los Angeles, California. The building was built in the 1920s Spanish-style exterior. Cracked terracotta tiles, narrow hallways that always smelled faintly of dust and cleaning chemicals. It wasn't luxury, but it was affordable, and in LA that's rare. The first night, she noticed how thin the walls were. She could hear her neighbor coughing. Someone upstairs dropped something metallic around midnight. Old buildings settle, she told herself. Then came the scratching. It started 3 days later, around 1:47 a.m. A faint dragging sound behind her bedroom wall. Not loud, not aggressive. Just steady. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. Alyssa sat up in bed, staring at the wall beside her closet. Rats, she whispered to herself. Has to be. The next morning, she called the property manager, a man named Victor who'd clearly been managing the place for decades. Probably rodents, he said casually. Old buildings get them. I'll send pest control. Pest control came. They found nothing. No droppings. No chew marks. No nests. The scratching stopped for 2 nights. Then it came back, but tease time. It wasn't just scratching. It sounded like breathing. Slow. Measured. Close. Alyssa pressed her ear against the wall, her heart hammering in her chest. On the other side, a faint inhale. And then an exhale. She stumbled back, nearly tripping over her nightstand. There was no apartment on that side. According to the layout, her bedroom wall bordered a narrow maintenance gap between units barely 2 feet wide. Not livable. Not accessible. Or at least, that's what she'd been told. The next morning, she bought a small Moshi-activated security camera and mounted it facing her bedroom wall. That night, she didn't sleep. At exactly 1:47 a.m., the camera alert pinged her phone. Motion detected. Her bedroom was empty. She was on the couch in the living room, staring at the live feed. Nothing moved. Then the scratching began. On camera, you can hear it clearly. Scrape. Scrape. And then a dent. From inside the wall, The drywall bulged outward slightly, as if someone had pressed a hand against it. Alisa gasped, dropping her phone. The dent slowly flattened again. She grabbed her keys and ran out of the apartment barefoot. Police arrived within minutes. They checked her unit first. Nothing. Then they accessed the building's maintenance crawl space through a locked door near the stairwell. The officer's flashlight scanned a narrow gap between units, and that's when they saw it. Blankets. Plastic containers. A battery-powered lantern. Someone had been living inside the wall cavity. The space ran the entire length of the building, just wide enough for a thin adult to move sideways through it. One officer called out, "Police, come out! With your hands up." Silence. Then, from deeper inside the darkness, movement. Fast. Scrambling. The sound of someone crawling away. They, y pursuit. The crawl space connected to an old, sealed-off storage room in the basement. The door had been pried open from the inside. By the time officers forced it open, the space was empty, but they found evidence. Dozens of empty water bottles. Canned food. A small backpack. And something that made Alisa's blood run cold. Photos. Printed photos of her, taken inside her apartment, sleeping on her couch, cooking in her kitchen, standing in front of her bathroom mirror, all shot through tiny drilled holes in the drywall. Someone had been watching her. 4 weeks. Maybe longer. The building went on lockdown while police searched the surrounding area. They never found the intruder. Victor, the property manager, insisted no one had access to the crawl spaces, except maintenance. But further inspection revealed multiple small entry points from vacant units on the 3rd floor, units that had been under renovation for months. Alisa moved out immediately. She stayed with a friend in Santa Monica and refused to return alone to collect her things. Before she left for good, she reviewed the last recorded footage from her bedroom camera. There was one clip she hadn't noticed before, recorded the night before the police search, at 3:12 a.m., long after the scratching stopped. The camera faces her bedroom wall. Everything is still. Then, a tiny section of paint flakes off, and a small hole appears. From the darkness inside, an eye, blinking, watching. The footage ends when the camera battery dies. Police later confirmed fingerprints found in the crawl space matched a transient man with prior burglary charges. He had once worked temporary construction jobs in older apartment buildings. He was never officially charged in this case. He vanished. To this day, the building still stands in Los Angeles. The maintenance crawl spaces have been sealed with steel plating, but tenants occasionally report hearing faint noises in the walls late at night. Management calls it normal settling. So the next time you hear scratching behind your bedroom wall, ask yourself something. Is it just the pipes or is so many listening to you breathe? What would you do if the apartment across from yours was empty, but the lights kept turning on every night? That's what happened to Marcus Hill in the fall of 2020. Marcus had just moved into a quiet apartment complex outside Houston, Texas. Nothing fancy. 2 floors. Long outdoor hallway. Beige paint peeling under the humid southern heat. The kind of place where everybody keeps to themselves. His unit was 2A. Directly across the hall sat to be locked. According to the leasing office, to be had been vacant for nearly 4 months. No tenant. Utilities disconnected. The manager, Denise, told him while handing over his keys, "We're renovating soon." At first, Marcus didn't think about it, until the lights came on. 3 nights after moving in, Marcus stepped outside around 11:30 p.m. to grab something from his car. As he locked his door, he noticed a warm yellow glow spilling from under Debbie's door. He paused. That was strange. The windows were covered from the inside with dark paper, but light clearly flickered behind them. Maybe maintenance workers? Do. The next morning, he asked Denise. She frowned. That unit doesn't have power. I saw lights. That's impossible. Electric's been shut off since June. Marcus laughed it off. Maybe it was a reflection from the parking lot lamps. But the following night, at exactly 12:08 a.m., he heard it, a lock turning. Metal scraping metal. He froze inside his living room. Slow footsteps echoed from across the hallway, back and forth. Measured, heavy. He opened his door slightly and peeked out. The hallway was empty, but under 2B's door, light again. Right at this time, and a shadow moved across it. Someone was walking inside. The next morning, he knocked on Denise's office door, harder than necessary. "You sure no one's renting to be?" She seemed irritated now. "Sir, I have the master key. The apartment is empty." "Then open it." She hesitated. After a long pause, she grabbed the key ring. They walked upstairs together. The hallway felt different during the day too quiet. Denise inserted the master key into 2B's lock. It didn't turn. She tried again. Still nothing. "That's odd," she muttered. "Odd how? The lock's been changed." Marcus stepped back. "Changed by who?" Denise swallowed. "Only maintenance has authorization." They called maintenance. The head tech, Louisa, arrived. Confused. "I haven't touched that unit in months." Eventually, they called the police. Officers arrived and forced the door open. The apartment was dark. Dust covered the floors. Plastic sheets hung over old cabinets. No furniture. No bedding. No signs of recent living. But there was one thing. In the center of the living room floor, a single folding chair. Facing the front door, Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Was that here before, eh?" "Ask it." Denise shook her head slowly. Police searched the unit thoroughly. No active utilities. No food. No water bottles. No trash. But in the bathroom mirror, written faintly in what looked like steam residue, were 3 words: "You're not alone." The officers brushed it off as a prank, probably teenagers breaking in. They replaced the lock and sealed the door. For 2 nights, everything was quiet. Then, on the 3rd night, 12:08 a.m., the sound of footsteps returned. Marcus didn't open his door this time. He called 911 immediately. While on the phone, he heard something new. A slow, deliberate knock. Not on 2B's door. On his 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. The dispatcher asked, "Is someone at your door?" Marcus couldn't speak. The handle rattled gently, like someone testing it. Police arrived within minutes. The hallway was empty. 2B's door locked. Untouched. Officers opened it again. The folding chair was no longer in the living room. It was positioned directly behind the door, as if someone had been sitting there, listening, waiting. And on the inside of the door, scratched into the wood at eye level, a small carving. Marcus moved out the next day. He broke his lease, despite penalties. Denise later claimed the incidents were unauthorized access by unknown persons. But here's what makes this story disturbing. Property records show 2B hasn't had an active tenant in over a year. Utility companies confirmed no electricity usage during the dates. Marcus reported lights being on. No power. No tenant. No fingerprints recovered. Yet multiple new renters have filed noise complaints about 2B since then. Lights turning on after midnight. Footsteps, pacing, and sometimes a chair scraping slowly across the floor. So if you ever move into a quiet apartment complex, and the unit across from you is locked, vacant, and under renovation, watch the light under the door. Because sometimes, empty apartments aren't really empty.